was something your family did that you didn't realize wasn't normal until you did it in front of others? Story 1. My mom is a yawn yeller. When she yawns, you can hear it from anywhere in the house. One time my sister had a friend over, and we were in the basement. My mom yawned upstairs, and my sister's friend asked, was that a coyote? Story 2. Use assorted German words in casual conversation, which as a child I assumed were English until I got confused stares from friends. My family has been in the US since 1902. Story 3. Sleep after the meal during holiday get-togethers. Just the men, the women exchanged gifts. We would all go into the living room and watch football and kinda doze. No big deal. Did this once at my girlfriend's family Christmas, and evidently I embarrassed her or maybe offended someone. Either way, I was the only one asleep while everyone else was energetic and conversing lively with family. I was woken up by girlfriend with an angry tone asking why I was asleep during the party. I was comfortable, relaxed, and we just had a lot of food. Made sense to me. Story 4. My dad jizzed on my siblings and I a lot. He was born in Iran, so he had a little bit of a language gap even as an adult, and what he would do to mess with my siblings and I is he would use his finger and thumb to punch the tiniest amount of skin on our wrists. And he would call it, because I think that's what he thought the sound of that was if you could get close enough to hear it. So the scene occurred plenty of times where my brother, sister, and I would be running away from him in the house, pleading not to get jizzed on. Years later, someone explained to me that the noise Iranians think bees make is. So therefore my dad was buzzing us, not jizzing, thankfully. Story 5. My mom and I have had this inside joke where we go, don't talk to me or don't even look at me in response to stupid. I don't remember how or when it started, but I've been doing it since I was a wee kid. I didn't realize how odd it was until I said fine, don't talk to me, then in response to my mom telling me I couldn't get a video game I asked for and a woman in the aisle with us got offended, she pulled my mom aside and told her I don't need to be talking to her like that and she needs to teach me how to respect her LMAO. My mom explained that it's a joke that we do but she doesn't think the woman believed her. Story 6. Apparently it's not normal for your parents to openly and graphically discuss their life with you, and it's definitely not normal for your parents to have multiple partners younger than you. Edit. Since so many are asking, my parents didn't start this behavior until I was an adult. When I say the partners are younger, I mean they're sleeping with college kids while I'm in my mid to late 20s. Story 7. Everyone in the family, extended family included, likes each other and gets along. One boyfriend commented that my family was weird because everyone got along, no massive fights, screaming and yelling each holiday, bringing up decade-old grudges once or twice a year. Like he has never met his uncle because his dad and uncle hate each other too much. Story 8. That my mother would scream and yell every single night in her sleep. I legit thought it was a normal thing. My mom has nightmares. Doesn't yours? Edit. Given the comments here, maybe a larger conversation needs to be had about why people have nightmares. Holy. Story 9. Smoking indoors. I didn't do it, but my GF at the time had a veritable panic attack when we had my mother over for dinner. It was the first and only time my mother came to visit. Story 10. People are absolutely baffled that my parents are still friends after separating, and that my dad and my stepdad get along so well. They even kept living together until mom bought her house. Dad kept the original house, and when my stepdad came to visit from his home country, he'd stay at home too. My parents hold no ill will towards each other at all, and have always gotten along well. They just grew into different people and realized they wanted different things out of life. Their houses are 10 minutes apart and they invite one another over for dinner all the time. They still help each other out when one of them needs something. They still do activities together, and they'll sometimes drive together to come visit me too. Many of my friends whose parents have separated have shared what amounts to horror stories about it. It sounds like a lot of separations are aggressive, violent even, and definitely not as chill as my parents' separation was. Seriously, the hardest part of all this for me is deciding whose house I'm staying at when I visit home. Story 11. It seems far more common for parents to be very overtly cautious controlling of their kids' activities. Not that my parents let us have free rein, but they trusted my brothers and I to walk around the neighborhood, usually in big groups. Bedtimes weren't really enforced after like age 10, and never on weekends. Ironically later I was pretty often the safe friend to the more cautious parents, because I turned out real boring. I was probably a bit of a special case because I've always had a touch of anxiety, but I think having my parents' trust kind of removed the rebellion of it. Edit. Well, apparently it's not as uncommon as I thought. Hello other boring free-range kids. Also I've been told the original expression is free reign, but I think both versions work so rain stays. Story 12. Flush the toilet after peeing. We tried to save water, so we basically peed until someone took a dump. Then one day I went to a family friend's house and freaked everyone out because I didn't flush. Edit. One forgot to mention that we were a family of 5 with one working toilet, and my dad shits like 3 times a day. Edit. 2. Our bathroom was on the 2nd floor, and it had a window. Story 13. Apparently it isn't normal to do grave rubbings. When I was little and went to graveyards with my family, sometimes they would bring paper and crayons to rub old dates and names onto them like a leaf rubbing. I was reminiscing on this once with my friends and realized that these rubbings weren't a normal thing to do once they all gave me horrified looks. Story 14. My parents were hardcore penny pinchers when I was growing up. Even though they both had decent jobs, our water usage among other things was controlled and timed, which led to me washing dishes in a certain way that minimized the number of times I opened the faucet. Over the years, my parents' tedious money-saving methods began to fade, but a few things didn't, our dishwashing method being one of them. One night, a friend of mine invited me over and I stayed for dinner. I offered to help with the dishes. It only took a few dishes before my friend was like, "What are you doing? Why are you washing in dirty water?" He then proceeded to turn the faucet wide open. I felt so wasteful at that moment. It felt like I was watching dollars bills go down the drain. I was expecting his parents to go off any minute for being so wasteful, but nothing happened. They probably thought I was weird for reusing the dirty water. This method of washing dishes was normal for them yet felt so taboo to me. I was 13 years old at the time. Story 15. 3 out of 4 members of my immediate family have the same condition where we grow benign tumors in our brain and spine, so conversations about brain surgery and muscle wastage and loss of function are common. I knew it wasn't normal, but we kinda keep forgetting how most healthy people react to I'm losing the ability to move my toes. It's annoying. Story 16. Oh, definitely casually telling my friends conversations that my mom and I had. Turns out my mom was oversharing my whole life and I never knew it was weird. Edit: when I found out it was weird and talked to her about it, she said in a very sad voice, "But you're the one person who really understands me and who I can talk to about everything." She made it a solid year of trying before she slipped up and told me a story about how my stepdad fingered her in her sleep. Story 17. My mom made up words. I didn't know this until I was an adult. Out in the world saying fake words and having no idea wanky-jawed means when you've been laying or sitting down and your pants need to be adjusted. Goo goo baby. Small baby that still makes cooing sounds and probably still wears a diaper. Just the memorable one. There are so many. Story 18. We had a bag in our deep freezer where we kept kitchen scraps until garbage night. It was pretty genius, but creeped some of my friends out when we would raid the Hot Pocket stash. Story 19. Turns out that sarcasm is considered really offensive by a lot of people. For my father, it was basically the default mode of conversation, and I was 23 years old when someone finally explained to me that, no, this is not how it works for most humans. Story 20. I mean, there's a lot of up on my end, but hey, race something pretty specific. Having dinners as late as 9 p.m. and just sitting there not talking the entire time we ate. This has went on since I was around 9 or 10. Absolutely me up when I started seeing my boyfriend and his happy family eating at 6 and being really excited and eager to talk about their days. It makes me think I'm just living with roommates rather than parents. Edit: wow, I did not expect my comment to be so relatable. It makes me feel a bit better knowing I'm not alone with this. Thanks everyone for sharing, and to clarify a couple things, my parents specifically are engineers that work from home and basically have their own schedules 247 as long as gets done, aka they have pretty relaxing jobs. So there's really no excuse for their behavior and bad time management as nearly 50-year-old adults. A family towel. We had a towel rack, and we'd just hang our towels. It wasn't designated to anyone in particular, and every few days we'd just replace the dirty towel with a clean one. In college, a friend came to visit our home when she very politely asked why we all used the same towel. It just never occurred to me that that was weird. Story 21. Stealing food from each other's plate at dinner time. Once we had finished our meal, you would pick at the slowest ones, usually Mum's. Wasn't until I did it at my now wife's house that I learnt no one else did this. Story 22. And the eldest of 7, and we're a super close-knit family, and always have been, even when I was 1 and my first sister was born. As far as I was concerned, she was my lil baby doll, and I loved taking care of her. We went through a lot as a family around the time the youngest 2 twins were born because of medical difficulties. So I used to sometimes write little letters of encouragement to my siblings, telling them I loved them and to hang in there. They could reread them anytime they needed it. This slightly predates laptops, phones being ubiquitous. My sister and I went to a sailing camp late high school, and we ended up on different boats. We were expecting a working sail school, but a lot of the other kids were apparently expecting more a cruise. They were mostly really snobby, rich kids from New York, and they didn't want to lift a finger to clean, cook, or actually keep the boat moving in the right direction. Had a few scary experiences as a result. But my sister is pretty sensitive, and apparently she was being outright bullied on her boat. One of the older boys was literally calling her thunder thighs, and she was by no means overweight, though it would be just as bad if she were. Apparently she cried every night when she was alone. We didn't see each other very often, and only had a few minutes to hang out when we landed on islands. She didn't tell me specifics the first time we stopped, but I could tell something was off and she wasn't having fun, so when we were back on the ships, I wrote her a note of encouragement. Someone asked what I was doing, and I casually said writing my sister a love note, and he was like, "Oh, are you in love with your sister?" And it was the tone of voice where you've just realized you're talking to an insane person and you're trying to stay cool to assess how insane they are. It was shocking and kind of humiliating, and it was so out of left field I didn't even know how to respond for a second, especially because I'm also female, and girl sisters can be more affectionate with each other, and it's not usually weird. I don't know why, but it still really bothers me. His mind immediately went to that place, and everyone kind of avoided me slightly more after that. I was pretty over the trip at that point, so I didn't mind everyone leaving me alone. Story 23. Respond to sneezes with a sarcastic, "You're not blessed." I got a lot of weird looks in school from my teachers. I about killed a distant family member from a surprised laughing fit my response sent him into though. He was actually kind of impressed we had that sense of humor at our young age. Story 24. My parents are super chill. They had the talk with us before we went to school, so when we were 5, they told us we're allowed to experiment, but only with their permission. My sister and I have both smoked and drank in front of them. They said if we want to start having we can, but we tell them so that they can buy the condoms. If we do badly in a test, they ask if we did the best we could do. If we did, then they're proud. If we didn't, they're still not upset. If we have any problems we can talk to them. My mom has actually given me tips. We're not at all interested in each other, just comfortable. But when I mentioned it to my friends, they said their parents beat them if they don't do well at school. They avoid the topic of like the plague and barely talk to each other when they're not fighting. Story 25. We kinda itch the inside of our throat's ears by making this noise with our throats and putting one finger in your ear and moving it real fast. Apparently this is very weird and my friends still look at me funny. Story 26. When we have big family dinners Sunday NGHTS, Thanksgiving, birthday dinners, Christmas, and just regular nightly dinner, my mom would serve us each individually from the kitchen instead of putting the food on the table and letting everyone serve themselves. I didn't realize how weird this was until being a guest at others' family dinners and seeing that not a single one of my friends' moms did this. It makes a lot more sense to let people serve themselves other than children, as they know what they want and how much a lot more than the hostess knows. Story 27. Not my family but my S. I was at their house and his parents were making dinner in the kitchen, prepping vegetables, while we and his brothers hung out in the living room. After a bit his dad comes in with sliced discs of raw potato and hands one to each of us. I was like, what am I meant to do with this? And they all go eat it. It's a snack. I took a little bite and it tasted just as starchy and bland and downright odd as I imagined it would. Apparently they do that every time they have potatoes. I didn't even know they could be eaten raw. The Irish, man, weird folk. Story 28. Constantly singing. My dad sings and plays the guitar. My mom was in chorus in high school, and 2 out of my 3 sisters take theater class and vocal lessons, and one of those sisters plays the ukulele. I constantly hear people walking around the house singing, and sometimes do impromptu musical numbers belting out different songs from shows and movies that we like. Because of this, I've kind of picked up a habit of singing without even realizing it. My friends will tease me sometimes when we do group Discord calls and they hear me start singing out of nowhere, but I didn't realize how truly strange it was until I was at a party with some friends. I was in a good mood so I burst into song, and they all just looked at me like I was crazy. That's when I realized that my house is like an IRL musical 247, and I guess that's not very common. Edit fixed the spelling mistake at the beginning. I was very sleep deprived when I made this post. Story 29. This one is kind of reverse, but I still remember the first time I visited a friend's house and discovered that their dad just lived with them all the time. For context, mine showed up once a year for my birthday until I was about 9, then never again after that. Story 30. Use applesauce as a condiment for hot dogs. Edit this blew up while I was asleep. Just to clarify, I'm American not German, but it's cool that people think I am. Maybe my ancestors were. The applesauce adds sweetness kinda like ketchup does. I switched the ketchup for applesauce, add mustard to balance out the sweetness and top it with chili. Story 31. We would have a plate of sliced cheddar on the table every morning for breakfast, and eat pieces of cheese as part of the meal. Apparently other people don't do that. Story 32. To me it was normal to have parents run out in the middle of anything for fire department calls. It didn't worry me too much until I saw a big farm propane tank explode as my dad went driving up towards the fire. Some of my friends asked if I was concerned about them getting hurt killed while out on a fire call, but it never occurred to me to worry about that because they've usually always came home. My dad ended up in hospital a couple times, but I've never worried about that. Now my kids can grow up with that, haha. Story 33. We stored bread in the microwave, loaves, buns, rolls, you name it. To use the microwave we would pull it all out and then put it all back. Not sure why I didn't question this growing up. That's just where the bread was kept. Story 34. My in-laws. Every time they come around for a meal they'll start washing and drying all the dishes afterwards. Even stuff we have next to the sink from breaky lunch. And if I've convinced one of them they don't need to do the dishes, the next lot to step into the kitchen will come out asking why they all haven't done the dishes yet. They're Dutch. Maybe that gives this some context. Story 35. Dancing around our Christmas tree. Not in like a satanic ritual sort of way, only during the holidays and your usual Christmas songs are sung. Did this every Christmas throughout my childhood on my mom's side. Apparently it's a Danish tradition, I believe. I brought it up to my friends one time and they thought I was insane. Seemed normal to little o' me. Story 36. Knife. I was diagnosed with severe asthma as a baby. They'd find me blue in the lips. My parents smoked around me until I was 8. They also stopped taking me to the doctor once I outgrew the hypoxia. My childhood was filled with suffering and shortness of breath. I thought everyone got sick like me and that I was just a massive wimp. Edit. It's hard to type on an iPad. Story 37. Using baby wipes in the bathroom when we did number 2. I mean I never did it in front of everyone, but every friend's house except for one didn't even have the option to do so. Story 38. My parents always had an open house policy. We lived in a tiny house but friends were always welcome to drop by. My friends were always welcome to stay. The house was always full of people, holidays, big meals with lots of family and friends. Went to my in-laws' strict appointment, only meals are had in silence even at holidays, and in 20 years I have never been allowed upstairs and neither has my daughter. She's 17 now and just doesn't visit them anymore because they are so weird. Husband avoids them as much as possible. I'm not sure if they are the odd ones or my parents are. Story 39. The if he hits you, it's okay to hit him back rule. Say he since I only have a brother, just as long as it wasn't downright brutal or enough to have longer-term consequences than a string that lasts maybe 3 minutes. It was okay. Edit. We also don't have formal breakfasts or even lunches. just dinners, and even those can get muddled. Breakfast because we all have widely varying sleep schedules, and lunch because we don't really have that much free time around noon. Story 40 Cook almost exclusively boxed canned foods and nothing fresh or from scratch ever. I genuinely had no idea that other people didn't eat this way until I went to college. Friends and roommates commented on the strange assortment of boxed foods I had, like instant mashed potatoes or bags of instant soup, and how disgusting they looked. I was mortified to learn that my whole life I had been eating really gross and processed foods, all the whole thinking they were normal and real. Ever since then I make a conscious effort to always get a lot of produce at the grocery store, something we never had when I was growing up, and also to learn to make new things from scratch whenever time allows. Story 41 I was punished as a child, not the standard put in timeout, or grounded from certain things. I learned in college that a lot of people my age 18 to 23 didn't get spanked with a belt to the point welts formed and it hurt to sit down, bars of soap shoved into their mouths after saying a naughty word, pulled down the stairs and smacked across the face repeatedly after getting caught doing something wrong, having things thrown at them, or being called terrible names. My dad liked calling me a queer. Story 42 My mom, when she is telling anyone a recipe or even instructing us in the kitchen, uses the statement and then go grrrr the tomatoes to make a puree of it. I've grown up with it, so I find it normal. I know she means I need to grind it in the mixer grinder. Grrrr being the human equivalent of the sound a mixer makes my sister use the same format. When she was discussing a recipe in her college, there were 8 to 10 people around her, who just looked confused. They asked her to repeat, then a friend started laughing, realizing that grrrr means using the mixer grinder. My sister took an actual minute to realize that it's not a normal way to say grind that up. We had such a laugh when she came back and told us about the incident. We still use grrrr when communicating at home. When communicating to outsiders, we have stopped ourselves from using that. Story 43 Whenever my mom cooks ground beef, like you do for tacos or spaghetti with meat sauce, she drains off most of the fat grease that comes off. She really prefers to get as much off as possible, so usually she takes some paper towels and sticks them in the pan toward an edge, then tilts the pan so the grease runs down and the towels soak it up. Easy to just pick them out and toss them in the trash. I've also heard grease is bad for drain lines and septic tanks, so that makes some sense to do that instead of pour it down the sink. I've picked that habit up from her. The first time I made spaghetti at college in the dorm kitchenette, I got some pretty weird looks. Apparently folks like to keep the grease for flavor. I don't cook for myself often enough that it would make sense to keep it, and I don't find leaving it in meat appetizing either, as it gets that white fatty look after sitting in the fridge. Story 44 Not something I've ever done in front of other people, but I get scandalized reactions sometimes when I tell people that my parents spanked me and my brothers. Maybe it's just not as common outside of the South, because a bunch of my friends' parents definitely did it too. I know corporal punishment has fallen out of favor, and that's probably a good thing, but sometimes people react like I should have been traumatized by it, and I wasn't. Story 45 Whenever it was Christmas Day, my parents would always hide a pickle ornament in the tree. Whoever found it first got to open the first gift and also get a small gift like a candy bar. We have done this for years, and whenever I tell my friends they always look at me funny. It is supposedly something that is very common in Germany. Story 46 Go for late night walks to the Tim Hortons for donuts. So I grew up in a family full of night owls. We all prefer to sleep in the day and be up at night, and most of us can function on very little sleep when needed. I remember on multiple occasions as a kid being like 8 or 9, playing quietly in my room around midnight while my parents and sisters watched TV downstairs, and overhearing somebody say, "I could really go for a coffee right about now," and then getting all excited because it usually meant we'd be going for a night walk and getting donuts. I didn't realize it wasn't normal for children to go out at midnight to get donuts until I was being all nostalgic with my friends in my teens, and they were like, WTF, I was in bed by 7, eating dessert any time of the day. We ate dessert like dinner, sometimes with a side of ice cream, cake and cookies organized on the plate like a balanced meal. Story 47 We had a sock basket. It was just a basket of socks. None of them were paired and they were all different sizes. The entire family just went and picked 2 random socks every day. In all honesty, it was a pretty convenient method. I still don't pair or wear matching socks to this day, and it seems so pointless to me. Story 48 Until I was 16-17, I thought it was a normal thing to call a portable air heater a kurpierdop, which in Polish is a combination of 3 beginnings of curse words like PSFK, for example. I realized it was my family idiolect when during winter break in high school, I went with a bunch of friends to the mountains and the refuge was extremely cold. So my friend and I went down to ask for a heater, and I 16 or 17 at the time, but I had pigtails and looked about 12 back, then asked the old guy at the reception for a kurpierdop. The panicked look at the poor dudes and my friend's face told me I said something very wrong. Apparently, the story behind calling the heater a kurpierdop is that when I was born it was in very cold September, and as the central heating was not running, my parents would use a huge, old, wheel-less heater when bathing me. It would always fall on my dad when he tried to set it up, hence every portable heater in our family household is called after the expletives that my dad would call out. I grew up in a family of deep sleepers. I could sing loudly, slam the door, and talk on the phone at 2 a.m., and I wouldn't get a single complaint. I've built some god-awful habits because of this. Didn't realize how rude I was when closing doors, staying up late until I moved to college and had roommates. Sorry to my roommates Joss and Franz. Story 49. The children were treated as basically kings, and the older you got the less important you become. I'm 15. When I turned 12 and could potentially get pregnant, my mom began looking for boys who I could potentially get with and have 4 kids with, thank for Planned Parenthood and coming out as a lesbian. My nephews and nieces are the top priority in every situation. No matter what, I remember when the family dog died and we weren't allowed to cry or even appear sad because it might make Nibbling's name sad. My 90-year-old grandmama is visited by anyone in the family maybe one a year. When I was 14 I got with this girl and I visited her and her parents and they respected me, and my feelings, and they said good night I love you, to both of us when they went to bed, and asked me if I was okay, and helped their older family members. Her and I aren't together but I miss feeling like a mother loves me. Edited for a word. Story 50. I became vegetarian very early on, like when I was 8, I hated the taste meat with a passion. How could anyone eat that? Well, turns out that my parents were paranoid about food poisoning, so whenever they cooked meat or ordered it in restaurants, it was way overcooked, rubbery and chewy. I always thought that that was what meat tasted like. At 25 my GF forced me to eat a medium rare Wagyu steak. I instantly fell in love with it. It tasted so soft and silky. Edit spellings. Story 51. Shopping with my parents. I guess when I was a teenager, I went shopping with my mother all the time. For us, it was a good time to just have a chat while we were just bustling around. Plus my mother doesn't have a fantastic memory, so I could remember things she might have forgotten. I didn't realize it might not be a normal thing until I overheard a friend gossiping about someone and saying yeah, he was shopping with his mother, like a baby. Story 52. Having 2 mums. A lot of the family friends were 2-mum households with the occasional 2-dad household. My best friend through junior school had a single mother. I must have been almost 10 when I realized that most families have a mom and a dad. Story 53. We buy treats for family every time we leave the house. And by every time, I mean every single time. Every time I get off work, I buy a treat for my siblings to share. Every time someone in the house has an errand to run, they come back with a treat for everyone. Didn't realize it wasn't a normal thing until I asked friends to wait for me while I picked out some snacks to take home. Story 54. Not necessarily me doing it in front of others, but going to friends' houses as a teenager and witnessing them. I went to a few friend events and birthdays as a kid, but I never really had any freedom. It was reserved for special events that were near my childhood apartment, since my dad was the only one who drove until my sister was of age. In most Asian cultures, we have honorifics and we don't call our elders by their names. Filipinos are more simplified than say Japanese, so my brother and sister were always kuya and ate kuyanate, but so were my cousins. We also had nicknames for everyone. In my freshman year of high school, I got to hang out with loads of my friends and they all referred to their older siblings as their names. I was so confused. Where are your honorifics? Isn't it disrespectful to call your elders by their name? Hearing my friends call out for their older brothers and sisters to come eat at the dinner table, with their actual name, shook teenage me. It still weirds me out a little, but I'm more desensitized to it now. Story 55. Tasting everyone else's food and drink and making everyone else taste yours. At restaurants, the question what did you order is always answered with one a try, and a forkful being handed to you or one a sip while a glass is being thrust into your hand. If the whole family is together, it can take several minutes for everyone to start eating their meals because of the forks and glasses being passed up and down the table. I didn't realize that most people don't do this until after I met my husband. In his family, you do not eat after other people. And it would make me crazy that he absolutely would not let me taste his food. If you wanted this, you should have ordered it. It took me a long time to understand that wasn't being selfish and that most people think what my family does is gross. Edit. I am so glad to hear from so many people who are sharers. I read all the replies to my husband and he is completely astounded to find out that people other than my family do this. Please continue to shove your forks in other people's face and spread the joy. Story 56. I grew up in a bit of a weird household. Mom definitely has some sort of paranoid histrionic issues and mental illness runs in her side of the family, so there were a lot of anachronisms in my childhood. Here are a few. You can never open windows, or the blinds on the windows in bedrooms. Keep them shut or people can see into the house and will steal you. Didn't know salt could go on food until college. Mind blown. Being verbally physically abused by your parents to toughen you up because you didn't have siblings who would have done so. Thinking it was normal for moms to get so mad at you for using up the last of the flour or turning on the oven, that they would throw things at you, call you selfish and ungrateful, hit the walls, say they wish they never adopted you, etc. Only to tearfully apologize hours later and say that they were a horrible mom and you had to console them into being okay at like age 15. Not being allowed to leave the house almost ever except for sports and one activity with a friend on weekends. If I did leave the house I had to text or call to check in at 30-minute increments or risk being yelled at mercilessly. Took me a while to break from that one as an adult. Still feel like I have to text my mom sometimes when I'm going to the grocery store. I managed to get physically independent at around 20. I'm 23 now, about to start a master's, and am almost fully financially independent in therapy LMAO. Story 57. Giving nicknames to everything we see, and talking to everything we see. I used to think it's normal to have a conversation with every pigeon on my way, but then I did it while walking with my friend, and that was the time when I found out that my parents are weirdos. Story 58. In my house, the kitchen trash can is located at the end of the cabinet, on the floor. All my friends would go to throw away trash under the sink, where they kept the trash can. Story 59. My dad always slept on the couch. Always. Mom slept by herself in her room. My sister and I never thought anything of it until we were old enough for sleepovers, and our friends were totally confused by it. Story 60. My mother would put nutritional yeast in our morning orange juice. And the OJ was the concentrated type that comes in a cardboard tube with tin caps, that you have to mix with water. Story 61. Talking about the size of our shits. My sister will call me, while on the toilet, and tell me about how big her turd is. Realized in college that this wasn't something other people do. Fortunately my roommate found humor in me barging into the room loudly talking about how big of a dump I just dropped in the toilet. Story 62. I would like to know if anyone else does this. Because everyone has treated me like a massive weirdo so far. My family has always cut the rind and layer of fat off a bacon rasher and fried that while the pan was heating up. It renders the bacon fat so you don't need to add extra oil. You cook the bacon in its own fat, and the fried bits are delicious, like little slivers of crackling, but I'm yet to find someone who agrees.